about the sixth grade academy. I was here when that went up for a vote. It was when they closed the sixth grade academy in Kennedy. Both of those, it was financial reasons. The program was wonderful. My nephew was the first one through the sixth grade academy. My daughters were the last ones through it. The program was amazing, and the turnout we had that night to try to keep the board from closing it was like, we overflowed the room. It wasn't the program, it was funding. You guys said that we've got, what, 12,500 kids in the city, and there's like 5,500 that are in the schools. We keep going through this whole thing of cutting. What are we doing to fix it so that we keep our kids? And one of the differences I've noticed, at least with the board and stuff, and Kyle, especially since you've taken over as president, is when we met up here for like the sixth grade academy and stuff and then closing, the board came up, they had their discussion, they made their decision. After they voted on everything, then they had their public comment. You guys give us an opportunity to come up and talk, and you set up a special meeting tonight to let people have a chance to have their voice and hear it before you make your decision so that it's an informed decision being made. The other thing that they've done in the past is they won't let anybody out. There's no discussion. You come up, you present your case, you say whatever it is that you want to say, and somebody might get back with you with an answer at some point in time. You guys are taking the initiative to have the discussion and answer the questions that you can. So those right there are huge stepping stones in progress that we've made over the years. Like I said, my kids have been around forever with the district and stuff. So please continue with those things, because that's going to make a difference as far as getting us where we need to be. So as far as the ESSER grants, you guys said that it was submitted to the recurring funds were submitted to the state. It didn't go to the board as far as like a line item for approval. What are we doing to prevent this from happening again? What kind of oversight are we putting in place to make sure something like this doesn't happen again and put us in this type of a situation? You also said that the board wasn't made aware of that projected deficit until the former CEO's or CFO's last day. Why was it not until then? Why wasn't that reflected in previous financial reports? Was there some kind of cover-up that took place? Was there some kind of wrongdoing on someone's part? Was something inaccurate? I would imagine, I mean, if it's showing the deficit that far out, why wasn't that being shown, and why wasn't anybody aware? Because if there's something that happened there that shouldn't have, then there should be some legal action happening there to make sure we're pursuing that. As far as the properties, and I know somebody had asked a little bit about this, where a lot of our properties in the district, when we've closed them and stuff, there's been deed restrictions where it's gone back to the family, it's had to be a green space, whatever. So as far as Taylor Parks and Randall, both of those, we own free and clear then, and yes, we can demolish those buildings and sell the properties.
Yes.
So is the plan to sell those properties, and is the profits from that worked into your budget as far as what you guys are trying to figure out to make up this deficit?
So I will say the plan is to sell it, yes, but I don't know that we could have a projection, because it would depend on what it's getting sold for, who's purchasing it. Like, think about Taylor Parks, like, what we would, if the city were interested in expanding the park, like, that would look different than, I'd say, if a developer's coming. So there's lots of things you have to.
So right now, as far as you guys figuring out what difference closing these buildings and stuff is going to make, the sale of the properties aren't factored into it, just the demolition.
Correct. It's the operational cost.
Yeah.
So there could be some additional money coming in that could help to offset some of the deficit.
Yes.
Okay. And as far as making a decision on selling those, that would be announced ahead of time at a board meeting as far as
Yep.
what's taking place, because
Yes.
like I'm in the Randall neighborhood, that affects my property value.
Yeah.
My brother's Taylor Parks,
Yes.
who knows what we're going to end up with in the neighborhood,
So I just want, that was all the time, so we can start answering the questions. Is that, okay.
Just two more really quick things, and you can continue with the questions. That's okay, please. As far as West staying the middle school?
We can't. We have to honor the fact that we've kept it to the 3 minutes.
Okay.
We still have online
Yes.
participants.
Okay.
out there. I wanted to jump in because I think it's a great question to say, like, yeah, we've talked about loss, we've talked about cut, and that's been the history of what we've done. You asked the question, how do we change that? How do we turn that around and not talk about cut? The biggest thing I've seen in my career is it's about living up to what we put out there and say we're gonna be the innovative district, because the places that are gathering and getting students to come to them, it's because they are doing some innovative programming, innovative items. I will say, you know, when I was here and we were merging Kennedy and Truman, and there was we were hoping to put in the Career Academy model, and we were hoping to just reinvent the way we were essentially doing the high school process. That was the biggest I've ever seen in my career where people were interested in what we were going to do at the high school level. Unfortunately, it fizzled out and it never came to fruition. And unfortunately, it was after I had left the district at that point as well. But it's doing those things, and we're going to have to do some innovative and different programming that is going to draw people to want to be part of our district. And trust me, those are long-term vision things I have in my mind of what I want us to see going forward. However, I've been saddled with I have to deal with the elephant in the room that's done first. But to your point, like, that's the stuff that's going to make that difference.
And as far as the elephant, what about TMP? Were the estimates that they gave us accurate? As far as those costs and stuff for the buildings and everything?
So I'm gonna go to your other questions, I'll mark that one down. But specifically, when you're talking about what are we doing to not have this happen again, I've already initiated conversations with the board's legal counsel. We're looking through the policies. We're making recommended policy revisions. Unfortunately, it can't be on the 10th because we're not prepared for it yet. But we're looking at fine-tuning our policies to ensure that when we have a grant application, for example, in the district, one of the proposed ones is that instead, right now, it's just at the superintendent level, is that him or his designee is able to sign off on these applications for grants. It would then revert back to the superintendent and the board, or the board president or treasurer would sign off. So that way we're able to actually see, because that's the biggest oversight here. That application was submitted. We were not aware of what was submitted for that application. That's one of the proposed policies. Per our bylaws, we have to do 2 readings and then we have to vote on it on the second reading. Other policies that we have in place, we're going from biannual, one of the proposed ones is a biannual financial presentation to the board, because they usually have the amended budget presentation that's done, usually March time. February, March. Yeah. And then usually you have your budget presentation that happens in June. Moving to more of like a quarterly financial budget update. So that way the district has the opportunity to ask more questions related to the budget, because that's when we're presented with that information. Those are kind of some of the things that we're putting in place to try to put a little bit more of oversight on this because of this. Unfortunately, the way the system was built the way it was, and the result of what we're in is because of the way the system was built. So we're looking at fine tuning it.
And I have talked to the board as well about reinstituting standing committees that used to exist in the school district, particularly the finance committee of the Board of Education, because typically the finance committee was, there was board members involved, superintendent, but then there were other district leaders, such as union presidents, then they would attend that committee meeting, and you had yet another group that had some oversight of it. But again, that was something that practice went away in the past few years, as far as I'm aware.
And so prior to like my arrival, I know that the committees that Mike's talking about, those were dissolved in the district. That was before even my time on this board. And so looking at, like Mike said, bringing those back so that there are more oversights. A lot of that was removed prior to this.
So as far as those going into place or being removed, would the board have the final say on making sure, like, could a new superintendent come in and just decide to dissolve all of that where there is no more oversight, or is there someone that's got to sign off on that?
No, that would have to go through the board now. So.
Okay.
Yep. Sorry.
Yeah, that's great.
What was the other? Can you repeat the other question that you had?
The TMP and the estimates that they gave us,
So,
compared to other districts and stuff, and I mean, I don't know anything about construction, but I was very involved with the bond and stuff, and my understanding is what they were telling us as far as, and I know everything changed with COVID with prices, but as prior to that even, apparently what they were quoting us isn't accurate as far as what we could do with that money. Do we have any recourse against them? Has anyone looked into it? What's happening with it?
Okay.
You might know this one better.
So specifically, when we hired, well, TMP was hired right on before my even arrival on the board. What they were hired to do was carry us throughout that election period. So they created the is it the PAQ? Right?
PQ,
PQ.
PQ application.
The PQ application. That is what was submitted to the state in regards to the bond. That's what TMP was hired for. So when they came in, we hired them to create that entire PQ application that broke down the amounts, that broke down specific things. What had happened since the election, as we all are aware, the inflation has hit. What once was costing us in 2021 is not costing us what it is now in 2023. We know that that inflation rate is going down, but we still know that it impacted a lot of those costs. So what they once were able to do, because back I remember when we were going through the bond campaign, they were saying $300 a square foot. Well, at the height of inflation, it was at over $400 a square foot now because of the cost. We know that they are monitoring those markets. They're constantly evolving because, again, inflation is constantly a fluctuating thing. But the biggest thing that we've seen is that because of that increase in cost across the whole world, I mean, really, that is what has driven those costs up, and that is what has brought up that value of that, what that $130 million could have bought us when that PQ app was submitted to the state. No longer we can afford because we have all of this increased cost. So that's why at each of those meetings, you've seen us discuss the high school and specifically those factors that were, the auditorium, the pool, and those different things.